And here we are. Welcome back to the Retro Sophomore, where we never sit out with your host, MD and CD. CD, what is going on? I mean, like today, we're doing it again. We're doing it again. College football's next stars. We saw some of you guys like this content. We're going to keep churning it out a little bit because, the list does not start and end with those names that we had in our last episode. We got a lot. We're talking about 11 guys. Bonus. That is a bonus. What did we talk about? 8 guys last episode? 11 today. Yeah, and there's more college football stars than just those 11 and those 8, right? So hopefully we'll get some more out as well. But these are some big time names to know. And I'm sure a lot of you already know. We're just here to drive home the nail of the hype hammer, if you know what I mean. So, CD, what's going on?
Not much. Pretty excited to talk about these guys. Is it crazy to say that I like this list almost more than our first list we came up with? I just think there's so many guys in college football, and that's the beauty of it, right? There's so many teams, so many players, and like this a natural churn that happens with the NFL draft, with graduation, with transfer portals, all that stuff that happens that makes college football so good that all these guys I'm just super, super excited about. If you do like this comment, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below your favorite players that we talked about or guys we missed and you want to talk about later on, or maybe that you can put us on their radar.
Yeah, I think the difference between like this episode and last episode is like this episode, you have a lot more guys with like legitimate starting production last year, right? So that's why you guys are probably going to know more names on this list than last. Even though last list you had probably none of those players were recruited outside of the top 100 in their respective recruiting classes. But the reality is these guys are proven producers in their respective position for the most part. For the most part. If not, then we have very good reason to believe that they can produce. If you haven't checked out our last video, make sure you do that. Make sure you do college football's next stars. That's the part one. But if you're here right now, you gotta do something for me. Right. If you like the content, you gotta like the video. That's just the rules, man. I don't make them. I don't make the rules. These are just what they are, and I'm here to enforce them. All right. So if you like the content, like the video, make sure you comment. Let us know like what players do we miss? Who are we sleeping on? Yeah, dare I say, there are people that we sleep on. We'll never sit out, but there are people that we sleep on. All right. Or if you're listening on Spotify, we love you guys too. Of course, give us a follow and give us maybe a 5-star rating. If you really enjoy the content, give us a 5-star rating. Or if you just want to support the channel, support some new content creators, you can do that just because you're a nice guy. Obviously, consider subscribing on YouTube as well. Did I miss anything, CD?
No, let's get into this. We got a lot to talk about.
Let's just go. And as we get into it, we're getting hot. Branson Robinson. Why do I know that name? Why do I know that name? Uh, Stud. That's why you know that name. How about 2 touchdowns in the College Football National Championship against TCU a couple years ago? We're talking about Branson Robinson. We're talking about running back for the Georgia Bulldogs this upcoming 2024-2025 season. And they're like, God, where was he last year? Well, he ruptured his patella tendon. That's what happened. I'm gonna let CD go into his resume a little bit more, but just know that Georgia, yes, they brought in. You're probably thinking Georgia brought in Trevor Etienne. Georgia brought in Trevor Etienne. Relax. All right, there's
We
plenty of
know, we
room.
know.
I mean, this is a Georgia team that ranked ninth in rushing yards per attempt. They were top 20 team in rushing yards per game last year, and people were snoozing on their run game at the beginning of the season. Remember that? Remember when that was a thing? Yeah, no
Hmm.
thanks. There is plenty of work to go around here. I mean, look, you're looking at Georgia backfields at one point had Sony Michelle and Nick Chubb in there at the same time. You had Todd Gurley and Nick Chubb. You had Sony
Todd Gurley,
Michelle and
Keith Marshall.
yeah. Oh, what a
Keith
name
Marshall's a
drop.
name drop.
What a name drop. So just know that there's plenty of room in this backfield for work. And why don't you get into Branson Robinson's resume and why we're so excited?
Yeah. So first of all, coming out of high school, he was a 4-star, a high 4-star at that 62nd ranked nationally, fourth running back overall, first player in that state of Mississippi, where he had a 4.49 registered 40 time in high school, a 40. We're talking about a legit freak. Not only can he do it with speed and agility and explosiveness, right, but he's also a state champion, record holding power lifter in the state of Mississippi in high school. This guy's a freak. He didn't walk on, but he showed up at Georgia as a true freshman and garnered immediate carries in a backfield and a team that, by the way, went 15-0 and won by like 70 points in the college football playoffs. with guys like Kenny McIntyre, Dejon Edwards, and Kendall Milton. This guy is legit. He was supposed to be a massive piece for them this year. They were devastated. And the reason why you don't know his name and the reason why he's aren't on this list and not already broken out this past year is because he tore his patella tendon back in August. He should be 100% by next fall. UGA, like you mentioned, really consistently struggled to run the football, and we're counting on him to be the guy. Yes, you mentioned they're bringing in Trevor Etienne, to be a guy for them. But guess what? It doesn't matter. You're losing Dejon Edwards. You're losing Kendall Milton. There's a lot of carries to go around. And but by the way, like it's not just like they took a chance to bring in an elite player like Trevor Etienne, who we love, by the way. We love Trevor Etienne. He runs super, super well at Florida. We thought they used him. They needed to use him a little bit more than they did. And I'm sure he'll get plenty of touches and star power in Georgia's offense. But there's a lot of production missing from this team. Dejon Edwards, Kendall Milton, Lad McConkey, Brock Bowers, arguably the four most consistent and reliable players on that football team. I'd throw in Marcus Rosemuth, Jack Saint as well into there, a veteran presence
Skill
as
players,
well.
skill position players.
Yes, thank you, skill players. So you obviously have a lot of mouths that are hungry for these touches that are going to be left open for them. But yeah, in that running back room for Georgia standards, last year it was decimated because it was injured. Injuries happened to them, and it kind of got pretty weak. But that running back room, they're bringing in some freshmen I like, right? But let's be honest, like for a Georgia running back room, it's pretty thin, and Branson Robinson is going to be a guy for them.
I agree, man. I agree. And I mean, they're missing some guys on the offensive line, but if you have been following Georgia recruiting in the last couple of years and some of these boys, like, sorry, I say boys, I mean men that they have brought in on the offensive line, it is absurd. So I'm not concerned yet. At least, I haven't done my deep dives on Georgia yet. I'm not concerned as of today, February 29th, happy leap year, on I'm not concerned about Branson Robinson running behind that offensive line for Georgia at all, or the schedule that he's got to play. He is a stud, and let's be real too. Like the state of Mississippi, you don't see a lot of 5-star talents, but the hit rate of some of these 4 stars out of Mississippi is like per capita, it is absurd. Like I believe 24/7 put this out there that per capita, Mississippi is the most talented football state in the entire country per capita, right? It's not like they're producing the most talent, just for their population, they're producing more talent than anyone else. So the what that means is that the hit rate on these guys is high. And yeah, I believe Branson Robinson is going to be a massive problem. I believe it was actually the same injury that Nick Chubb had, another Georgia running back. And that is a tough rehab. That is a tough rehab. But this is a tough kid. This is a tough kid. And he's young. He's malleable. He's robust. He will come back from this, and we'll see how he is. We'll see how he is in spring. We'll see how he is in fall camp. I don't know that he'll be back for spring, but hopefully, we get some more updates on his injury. But I believe that if he plays and he's ready to go come in the fall, he will be a huge part of their offense, right? And Trevor Etienne is a star in his own right, but it's also insurance, right? Like if Branson Robinson doesn't work out, like Trevor Etienne is probably not your workhorse back, right? I mean, like he wasn't even the workhorse back at Florida, right? He was probably the better running back of the duo that they had over there at Florida, but Branson Robinson, if you can have that thunder to that lightning, that Mark Ingram to that Trent Richardson, you know, gosh, this could be
So
this could be really lethal.
Sony Michelle to your Nick Chubb. Yeah, no, and
Yeah,
also you have a guy like Carson Beck, who we love, by the way, and you were on him more than anybody else was early on last summer. But wouldn't it be nice to just take a little bit of stress off his back, right? Because I mentioned earlier, they're losing a lot of weapons offensively. There's a lot of names, a lot of hype around the names, right? Robert Thomas, you remember him, high profile SEC transfer from a year ago. Dominic Lovett, same thing as well. Dylan Bell, another high recruit. London Humphreys, freak from Vanderbilt. Colby Young, freak from Miami. Right, Oscar Delp has all its potential. Lawson Lucky, all its potential. Right, like Aaron Smith, same thing. Burner, but like there's still a lot of question marks, and someone's got to take those reins. And Lad McConkey, really, really good. Brock Bowers, unbelievable. Dejon Edwards and Kendall Milton, massive amount of experience. Someone's got to take that reign for this Georgia team that's going to be expecting to compete for a national title. They were a game away last year, losing to Bama, and probably would have won it all last year. They were probably the best team. in maybe a down year for them. And yeah, Branson Robinson would
Michigan
be a
fans are
massive
going to be
addition.
upset with you, by the way. Michigan fans are going
Okay,
to be
but
upset with you.
Georgia would have been favored against Michigan. Okay, that's kind of,
Yeah,
and it
no,
would
I'll
have been a
agree with you
point or
there.
two, whatever it was like. But regardless,
But I wouldn't have been able to cash my plus 1050 national championship sprinkle with Michigan right there. So,
that's true.
anyways, I'm all right with the way that it worked out. And I'm sure you Michigan fans are as well. Speaking of Georgia players, let's move on. Let's move on to another Robinson from Georgia. Let's talk about Ellis Robinson the fourth. Ellis Robinson the fourth. Couple DBs in this cornerback room kind of hightailed it out of there. It's really interesting. Some of those young guys. Now the secondary is still going to be really nice. It's going to be really nice. But Ellis Robinson is probably the highest rated cornerback recruit that they've ever recruited there. One of the higher rated cornerback recruits we've seen in the
All
last few
time.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so unbelievable player. 2 year starter at IMG. I believe that he'll get pretty solid playing time from the start. But anyways, you're gonna hear about this guy for a while. He profiles well athletically. He's got the speed. He's got the strength, talent. He did all of the combines and he did all the practices and the All American game. He did it all. He's a stud. I'm sure you would agree because this was a guy that when we were talking about a list of guys that we wanted to come up with college football's next fighter, this was a guy that you brought up. So why did you bring up Ellis Robinson?
I mean, he's unbelievable. First of all, you mentioned those camps he went to, especially the Under Armour All American Bowl game. Those things are meant to expose corners. Those are wide receiver friendly events, right? And he went down and shut down elite wide receivers. Him and Cam Coleman went back at each other all week. All week, it was awesome to see. And Elias Robinson is no doubt in line to be one of the next stud corners of that Georgia's had in the last couple of years. You mentioned
Is
a
it
couple of young
pronounced
guys leaving.
Elias? Is it pronounced Elias or
I'm sorry, Ellis Robinson. That's my
okay?
apologies there. AJ
It's like
Harris and Nyland Green are off transferring. Those are former five-star guys. You have Kamari Lassiter off the NFL, who is a stud for Georgia as well. But hey, if you're telling me that you have a guy with the physical tools and the mental makeup of Ellis Robinson, who was a 2 year starter at IMG, who played legit competition and shut down everybody, right? He is Fran Brown recruited. Okay. He's developed by T Rob, Dante Williams, and Kirby Smart in tandem there. That is a recipe for elite prospect, elite future for Ellis Robinson. And yes, it's a crowded room. I get it. London Julian Humphreys is really good. Dalen Everett. Right. They got some younger guys. They've also recruited Daniel Harris as well. But hey, Ellis Robinson's legit. Okay. And he's gonna push his way to playing time faster than you think. And there's a reason he's on this list because right? If you're a stud 5 star playing at Georgia, right, and he's a freshman, you're going to get some lofty comparisons. And I don't want to say, right, I don't want to put unfair expectations on him. I don't want to say like Derek Stingley type impact, but like to me, if you want to talk about like just profile, right, makeup, coaching, like notice, right, to be in a program like Georgia, like, yeah, Ellis Robinson has it all to be considered a rising star in college football, even before he's taken a snap of college football.
yeah, and I got his highlights pulled up here as well. Like one of these days, we're gonna have the production value to show you guys like highlights like this or whatever. And look, you shouldn't take everything from highlight reel, right? The reality is, just looking at like the way he plays, like a willingness to tackle, right? And that's a big deal. Good open field tackler, speed, 4.5 is I believe what he ran at an event earlier this year, which is I mean pretty solid for someone who's 17, 18 years old, if you ask me, with only room to improve there. 36-inch vertical. That's the kind of athletic profile that you kind of want coming out of high school, and the type of athletic profile that Georgia certainly benefits from. Can he fill out his frame a little bit more? Yeah, sure. But his athleticism, you saw, like he was in physical battles in those camps, and he won a lot of them. He won a lot of them. So I'm with you. This is a guy with huge upside, but also high upside of just playing early, getting on the field early and often.
Yeah, if you want to talk about like,
Oh, sorry about that.
sorry, if you want to talk about like ways to get on the field at Georgia early, it's to be a willing tackler in the secondary, and you have to be that if you want to play in Kirby Smart's defense. And Ellis Robinson, like you mentioned, certainly fits the bill. There's a reason why he's the only class of 2024 that we're talking about today because we feel that goodly about his upside and about his more so like future prospects in the short term.
Let's talk about Ruben Bain. And we mentioned at the beginning of this video, we're like, we're gonna mention a lot of guys with, production from their early careers. This is one of them. All right, Ruben Bain is a freak. Is a freak. He was a massive disruptor, pass rushing in the run game. He was an absolute stud for Miami this past year. He was just a true freshman. He was just a true freshman. So I'll let you take the reins on Ruben Bain a little bit here, but I mean I could not be higher on an individual. Like this guy's NFL scouts already have their eyes on him, right? And he's not eligible to be drafted for another 2 seasons.
Yeah, you mentioned it. He's a freak. He's 6'3", 275 pounds. Going to be a true sophomore because of all that production he put up as a true freshman. He was the 63rd ranked overall player in the class of 2023, 11th edge, and the 15th in the state of Florida. Massive for Miami to keep him in state, which we talked about has been a key to college football, right? Is Miami. And if you want to be successful there, you have to recruit Florida well. And they've done that under Mario Cristobal. He was third team All ACC as a true freshman. 9.5 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. And he'd only started the last 10 games of the year because they couldn't keep him off the field. Ridiculous. We're expecting massive growth. Maybe not numbers wise, but like in terms of just physical, overall edge presence, run defending, pass defending, disruption, everything that helps this defense of Miami take a step back. Listen, you're losing two safeties, Cam Kitchens and James Williams, off the NFL. You need help in your secondary. And what better way to do that than to get pressure on the quarterback with Ruben Bain? That is massive. And also, you have others in the front seven that are bringing in help. Elijah Alston, right? Our transfer coming in to help him, I believe, from Marshall. Marquise Lightfoot, talented 5-star from the Chicago area, as well as Justin Scott and Armando Blunt as well. Big interior lineman there. Yeah, I love this. And also, Miami has a legit chance to make a run in the ACC. And a guy like Ruben Bain has been a cornerstone that this staff has really put their anchor to and say, you take us to the promised land. You take Miami back to be in the U.
Yeah. For reference too, like he's a good run defender. When we talk about like his niche, like what he is really, really good at, and what NFL scouts are already drilling over is like he's already a very developed pass rusher. Already a very developed pass rusher. And there's a lot of things that go into like PFF grades, but like this is like the tier of pass rusher that we're talking about right here. Like in terms of like grades on PFF, Jalen Green, I don't know, just led the FBS in sacks. We're talking about Dallas Turner, Princely Uman talking about Kamon Rucker, Chris Braswell, Aaron Lewis from Rutgers. I mean, that is the kind of player that we're talking about, and he was a true freshman last year doing that kind of stuff. You know, now I don't know that he was putting up Will Anderson type numbers, but he was dang productive as a true freshman. Dang productive. He is going to be a massive problem. You know what he does too? Like a guy like that makes the rest of your defensive line so much better. So much better. It's kind of like the Will Anderson effect, especially on third downs. Like you just made everyone better. Like you can get like when Will Anderson was out there and he was just giving Dallas Turner one-on-ones, free reigns to just absolutely take off the head of a quarterback, which Dallas Turner does pretty well. It it is invaluable to a defense. Any defense would be lucky to have Ruben Bain. Thankfully for Miami fans, he's over on your team and not on another team. Let's talk about here it comes. You guys ready? Here it comes. Nico Iamaleava. Oh, you bet you thought I didn't practice that one, huh? And I know I'm pronouncing it right. I'm literally looking at it right here. This is what Tennessee Volunteers has on their roster card. Nico Iamaleava. There it is.
Jeez.
So let's talk about him. All right. Let's talk about him. He's quarterback for Tennessee, 5-star from California. He profiles so athletic. And here's the thing. I know CD played volleyball for a number of years. If you want to talk about like the level of athlete that volleyball players are in terms of like raw, like raw athleticism, like hand-eye coordination, bounce. We're talking about
Explosiveness,
explosiveness, reaction,
anticipation.
anticipation. It is they're like elite volleyball players are elite athletes, right? Nico is an elite athlete. He's got an older brother that plays on Long Beach State, which is a very good volleyball program there. He himself was a highly rated volleyball player. I mean, he's 6'5". I mean, he's a dude. He's got the size. He's got the arm talent. The spring game, man, like in spring game last year, people were already excited about this guy. People were already excited. This was arguably number one quarterback in last year's class. I know some people had opinions about other quarterbacks, and it was a really good quarterback class, but Nico, in my eyes, was probably the number one quarterback coming out of that cycle. And he looked like that in the Iowa game. Yeah, sure, he made his freshman mistakes against what the best defense in the entire country metrically. It's not the best defense in the country, but like one of the best defenses in the entire country. I mean, they shut down Michigan in that Big Ten championship game, and he looked good. And he looked good whenever he played this season. He's got mobility, he's got arm talent, he's also got some talent around him on this team in terms of wide receiver. We'll see what the offensive line looks like next year because you had a couple games where you had some injuries and the offensive line was not particularly good, aka that Florida game. And you're gonna be missing a couple guys there, but gosh, he is a stud. There's a reason that he's pretty high on the Heisman odds this year. Absolute monster. I'll let you touch on Nico a little bit.
Yeah, you mentioned like the high profile recruit football and volleyball. We love the dual threat capabilities, right? You're gonna see a couple other guys on here in the rest of our list. Yeah, he's a redshirt freshman because he redshirted. Obviously, Joe Milton came over, was in the program a couple years, and he got his chance to be the starter for him. Up and down a year for him, but everyone was waiting for Nico to take over, and this was the year they circled after a really successful 2022 with Hendon Hooker and company there. Nico Iamaleava, yeah, Nico, like you mentioned, has a lot of talent around him. Dante Thornton is a good deep threat. Brew McCoy is returning from injury. Squirrel Wright. You got the true freshman Mike Matthews, who I love. Chris Brazel from Tulane. Holden Stays coming over at tight end from Notre Dame. And obviously Lance Hurd to bring in to protect at one of the tackle positions for you for Tennessee. I love it. I mean, obviously the potential is off the charts. You kind of forgot how athletic he was until that Iowa game, and you saw one of those couple of those runs. Like, wow, just literally in a flash for a guy 6'6", 206 pounds to move like that with the arm strength, the arm angles, the capability. I love that he got a year to develop, but obviously that red shirt he probably won't need because he will be gone in a year to the NFL draft, or I guess after next year in terms of after his red shirt sophomore season, right? But yeah, obviously, I love that Josh Heupel is his coach because he puts guys in positions to really succeed. Last year, let's be honest, they were kind of a defensive and running football team, and that was more so because of the limitations you had consistently down to down with Joe Milton throwing the football. But I think with Nico, you can be really, really explosive, right? And the deep throws over the middle, running with his legs. I love it. I love it. And a breakout from him, what does that mean for the team and for Tennessee? That means massive SEC success, right? That means potential playoff berths. That means a complete raised ceiling of this team's, obviously this year, but also the year after that. Yeah, I love it for Tennessee. This is a guy that we had to talk about. Obviously, he kind of broke out in that Iowa game with the 3 rushing touchdowns, obviously 4 total touchdowns in that game. But I think this year he'll really be on national attention in the SEC with chances to play against some really good defenders and make them look silly.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about the talent that's going to be surrounding him, uh, you're bringing in Lance Hurd on the offensive line, highly rated offensive line recruit. If you haven't checked out our transfer portal video on him coming from LSU, you definitely should. Also, Chris Brazel. We also talked about him in another transfer portal video as well from Tulane, wide receiver. He profiles really well. Holden Stays from Notre Dame, tight end. Maybe he hasn't broken out yet, but who knows whether or not he'll look pretty good in this offense. Brew McCoy, he's back next year, right? For one more season.
He's
Squirrel White, I
returning from
know
the
definitely
ankle.
is. Is Brew McCoy back?
Yeah, he's got the ankle injury. He's returning. Yep.
That's right. Yeah. Dylan Sampson, who by the way I thought was just every bit as good as Jalen Wright and Jabari Small. I thought so. This is a pretty star-studded lineup here on offense. I mean, you're looking at it Heisman odds wise, he's sixth favorite in the Heisman. So this is by no means a sleeper. Again, this is not a sleeper video. This is hey, this is a rising star in college football. Here it is. So yeah, Nico's kind of a stud. So y'all are gonna be tuned in for those games for sure because they will be on national prime time.
Yeah, side note here, I would love to play with him in the NCAA football game that's coming out this summer. He's gonna be a guy that's gonna be super fun. He's literally a creative player in Madden where I'm gonna make him 6'6" and run around, crazy arm angles, throw off the run platform, all this stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
he is a
Crazy
freak.
fast receivers.
Yeah,
Yeah. Now,
gimmicky
however,
offense.
if you're building a franchise, right? I mean, Tennessee's already established, like if you're building a franchise, you're playing franchise mode or dynasty, you got to be building up the FIUs, the Arkansas States, the North Texases.
Kenny
You gotta be
Burns, Kent State.
Kenny Burns, Kent State, Ball State. You gotta be building him up over there. So, uh, but yeah, no, he will be fun. Definitely, I'm sure he'll get a plenty of usage in online play. Let's talk about another guy in the SEC. Let's talk about Torian York, true freshman last year, freshman All American, freshman All SEC. Now, here's what I will say about Torian York. He had the benefit of playing next to probably probably the best linebacker prospect in this year's draft class, this NFL draft class. Probably. There can be made an argument. You talk about Jeremiah Trotter, you talk about Junior Colson, you can talk about Peyton Wilson, who just ran a 4.44 at the combine. Ridiculous. Cedric Gray, I've heard people talk about. But Edgerrin Cooper's way up there, right? And Torian York, he benefits from that. And he also benefited from playing behind a very effective defensive line as well. Very
Can
effective.
I, can I say this though? But it took a couple years. Obviously, we loved Edge Cooper last year, right? He was a baller. We were begging him to play more, right, under DJ Durkin's defense. But like he
How
didn't
long was
really
I
get
begging
freed
that?
up.
But how long was I begging for that, by the way? How
So
many times did
way
I
too
say,
long.
why is Chris Russell playing? Edgerrin Cooper should be playing every single snap. I was saying this last year. I've been saying this last 2 years. Oh,
I
wait. He's grading out as a first round talent. Side
Surprise,
note.
surprise. But also I will say like Torian York, what he did not only to come in as a 3-star, right, almost top 1,000 player, right? 970th in the country, right? 160th in his state of Texas alone in the class 2023. Come in and earn a job right away at Mike linebacker to call the defense. A lot of responsibilities on him. And he was that physical presence as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid to be able to free up a guy and a playmaker like Edge Cooper. Yes, I think he benefited from Edge Cooper, but also Edge Cooper benefited from Torian York. And that's why I think he's on this list because you're bringing in a couple guys right, who are going to play alongside him, have to replace Edge Cooper, that I think Torian York makes the rest of your front seven significantly better. And you can talk about that more, obviously, as an A&M guy.
Yeah, and I would say like the linebacker production has been not as effective as it should be with that defensive line that they've had in the last couple of years. Buddy Johnson was probably the last like really good linebacker that they had before Ezra and Cooper came along. But in between that, like Andrew White had his struggles. Andre White had his struggles. Chris Russell, man, I mean, the fact that and I was listening to Torian York in an interview as well, and he talked about how DJ Durkin trusted him very early on. Like he knew that he was going to be the starting linebacker basically like in the middle of summer. Like it was it was pretty clear. Like he started taking first team reps, and then DJ Durkin had come up to him and said that he had earned the starting linebacker position over like very experienced players like Chris Russell, and you were also competing with some younger guys like Damian Sanford. There was a lot of competition to be had there, but also there was a lot of opportunity, and Torian York definitely made the best of it. So I'm not here to hate on Torian York at all. I think he's a phenomenal player. A&M fans were pissed when they missed out on Anthony Hill, and they got someone maybe not as explosive, but man, just as productive. And right now, from the looks of it, just as good, just as good. So this is one of those guys. This is probably the only player on this list that probably was less than a 4-star coming out of high school, if I'm correct. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
I'd have to go back and look, but I believe everyone else was. So this is the lowest rated player that we have on this list, but he is a rising star because man, he's gonna be starting next year. He's already talked about a little bit how he likes playing next to Alex Howard. He likes some of these other guys. He's gonna have to be the leader in that linebacker core. You know, uh, I believe Chris Russell's gone next year.
Yep.
Yeah, he declared for the NFL draft, and so you're going to be playing. It's going to be Torian York. You got either Scooby Williams or uh, Alex Howard there, neither of whom are experienced. And no one in that linebacker room is experienced with this new defense that Mike Elko's bringing in. So Torian York is certainly going to have to be a leader, and he's going to have to produce. So we'll see what he does. But I believe very heavily in Torrey York. He's going to be probably my pick for kind of a keystone player on that Texas A&M defense next year. Like in this transition year, like who are those players that are going to have to step up big time in their roles to make sure that this defense gets it figured out? That's going to be Torrey York. And the thing I also like about Torrey York as a freshman, like he was calling defenses, by the way. It was not Edge Cooper. It was Torrey York that was calling defenses. He was lining guys up. He was making adjustments. He was making calls. And he did a really, really, really good job at times. Like a really good job. There were a couple games where he made some misadjustments, but for the most part, A&M's run defense was largely effective this year. It was their secondary that was quite the issue.
That's why I had to put him on this list here, or at least I had to ask you to be like, hey, is Torian York the guy for A&M? Because you lose so many people in that front seven. McKinley Jackson off the NFL, right? You transfers out, you have Nolan and McKinley Jackson, Chris Russell, and Edge Cooper, all guys, seniors, redshirt seniors, guys that have been there forever for A&M, very productive players. I guess Chris Russell excluded, but you lose Fadil Diggs, you lose Nolan. Wow,
Walter Nolan.
Walter Nolan, thank you, Walter Nolan, LT Overton. You lose a lot of guys in that front seven who played productive snaps, and you're bringing in Nick Gordon, Cassius Howell, right, Rodess Johnson. You're bringing in some other guys, and you're going to mesh a few new pieces. You got some young rising guys coming up as second and third year guys, and he's going to be the guy that has to get everybody in alignment in a new defense and a new system, right, with five other new faces around him. And so, to me, three in York. And if I look everywhere on this team, on this roster, I really like the A&M depth they have and what they can do with their schedule in year one in this new SEC, but also in terms of the depth they have for a team with a new coach is pretty impressive. Secondary, we'll get into. There's 8 to 10 different players that can play, whatever. But to me, it was like, get your front seven short up in the SEC, and you're gonna have a chance to win this year. And yeah, that's why I circled three in New York as first of all, he was really good. Freshman All American, started 12 games, 74 tackles, 3 sacks, forced fumble, right? But also in terms of like being that linchpin, like you mentioned, to get everyone in line and to be a productive defense and a successful year under Mike Elko, who you believe is going to have a good defense every year. But you also have to have players to execute that. And Trey New York to me is that guy.
We just got finished talking about maroon. Let's get into a different kind of maroon. Instead of going south, we're gonna go north to Minnesota. We're gonna talk about Darius Taylor. Now, let's get this out of the way too. That's a crowded running back room up there in Minnesota. There's some new looks up there. But guess what? I mean, Darius Taylor, how many games was he over like 200 yards last year? Was it 3 games?
Well, it was so he played in 6 games. He finished 4 from start to finish,
Oh my
right? And he
God.
averaged 184 in all of those games. That is ridiculous. 121 carries for 737 in just those 4 games.
It's
Five
not just
touchdowns.
volume either. Like it is volume, right? The pure yardage is volume, but like the reality is like he was effective. Like he was very good. Those other running backs in that backfield were not. Bryce
No,
Williams was not effective. You had
nope,
Sean Tyler, not effective.
terrible.
So how was it that this true freshman running back, 4-star, highly rated player in terms of Minnesota standards, how does this guy come in and he was just immediately a way better, even Zach Evans. He was way better than Zach Evans, I thought. So it's like, how is he that effective? And PJ Fleck, it's a big deal to play running back for him. And everyone knows that, right?
Yeah.
Take care of the football and do what you got to do. Like, uh, he doesn't necessarily trust everyone to do that, right? And Darius Taylor, man, awesome. He did awesome. And they've brought in Sam Bangura in that running back room. And who else did they bring in that backfield?
Marcus Major,
Marcus
as well
Major
as
from Oklahoma.
two incoming true freshmen as well. But those guys will probably redshirt. Although Oifeme Ojabadu, I got to figure that out. But he's turned out to be a stud, obviously, in spring so far. But yeah, to me, what makes him a breakout guy is the production. 184 yards per game is not going to last over 12 games. But if he is healthy, which the plan is for him to be healthy, like he's going to be a guy in the Big Ten. He was on pace to be Big Ten running back of the year in that type of era, first, second team Big Ten in a very, very loaded Big Ten running back room, right? And he's a guy, true sophomore, coming out of Michigan a year ago, seventh player in Michigan. He was a guy, yeah, he was only 350th in the country, but for Minnesota, He was one of their highest rated recruit, and he was the gem in terms of they fought tooth and nail to keep him committed. They identified him early in the state of Michigan. He actually played wide receiver up until his halfway through his junior year of college of high school football until he made switch to running back. So that's why he was a little bit delayed in terms of his actual recruitment. Didn't take off until after his senior year when he balled out in the
And
state of
that's a reflection on
Michigan.
his ranking. Like he probably should have been rated higher if he had played running back all those 4 years.
And that was reflected when teams like Notre Dame and Michigan came crawling, not crawling, came in at the last
Yeah,
second
they were
and were
begging.
begging.
They were at the
Yeah,
knees of Minnesota in a
it
recruiting
wasn't it
battle.
wasn't us. But and let me tell you, there were a lot of fans, me included. Well, I mean, not me included. There were a lot of fans that were okay. Darius Taylor's gone. Some team will NIL him away from us. But hey, the boosters ponied up and they kept him, and he's happy to be a gopher. I think he really loves it. And why would he not? Why would he leave? Right? Because he has all this volume and production. But I also think that the next step he can take is in that receiving room, which we saw a little bit against Iowa. We saw it in certain games, we saw it in high school,
Yeah.
obviously, as a receiver. They want to keep him healthy. They want to rotate more running backs, but also use him out of the backfield. You're bringing in Max Brosmer. You've got Daniel Jackson. A lot of fun things happening on this Minnesota offense, right? That also returns five major contributors on that O line that graduated. One player, a senior offensive center for them, and they bring back a couple guys that can really play center as well. So yeah, it's a run heavy offense. When healthy, he was unbelievable. There's no question that he should be on this roster. If you're a college football fantasy fan, right, you understand that he has immense value going in the first and second rounds of some mock drafts already. He's a guy that is just awesome. And if he blows up or if he continues to stay healthy, really, it's not if, it's not if he breaks out. It's more like if he stays healthy, then he will break out. And that over under of 4.5 will probably hit in favor of Minnesota. So yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and Say Bangura is a 1,000 yard rusher in his own right. Major uh Marcus
Marcus
Major
Major.
probably could have gone to a different couple other schools. And I think they're a promising chance to compete for this running back spot. But like when I look at bringing in Say Bangura and Marcus Major, that was depth. That was to spell Darius Taylor of the absolute abysmal workload that he would have had to endure. I mean, you saw with Muhammad Ibrahim. I mean that dude. Oh my, talk about workload. That dude has zero tread left on his tires. Minnesota literally drove him to the ground, and I think they're trying to just avoid that somewhat in this instance. So, can you blame him? You can't really blame him, right?
Oh no. Well, first of all, you saw what happened, and they even talked about it. If you look at that bowl game, right, of the Quicken Lane Bowl, I mean, he had almost 40 carries. He had over 200 yards. I mean, we were starting our backup quarterback that was an option quarterback in high school. Like we weren't going to throw the football. We were playing Bowling Green. You had to just run the football, and Darius Taylor did it. And they understood. PJ Fleck went to them like, hey, you're probably going to have 30, 40 carries in this game. And he's like, okay, it's the last game of the year. You might as well rest up the next couple months and really attack spring football. And that was it. But yeah, like you mentioned, they're bringing in some depth pieces because they got down to their sixth string running back last year, who was a walk on Jordan Newman, who actually ran the ball well in one game, but he was the only running back that was healthy that was not fumbling every snap. And so they ran him like
Yeah.
35 times, and then he got hurt again, or he got worn down and was not the same the rest of the year. So they're trying to avoid that. Credit to Minnesota for actually being able to build depth at a position of need in their standards, in their offense. So we'll see. But there's Taylor. You watch him play. He's such good vision for a true freshman. His contact balance is incredible, right? His run after catch, right? Wow, run after contact is just incredible. I don't know. There's not enough good things to say about how he runs the football and his agility, his breakaway speeds at times. What's that?
I want you to pin this clip when I say like when I watch him play and he does when I say he does everything well, I mean he does everything well. Right. And you were just mentioning it. Second round draft pick in the NFL draft in 2 years.
That's not
I'm gonna I'm
crazy.
I'm gonna pin it right now. What he's a you said unbelievable runner. We already talked about that. He's unbelievable receiver. He's a receiver in high school. How about in pass pro? Bryce
Oh,
Williams was the only person that was his only job. See, that was what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be don't fumble and play pass pro downs. Darius Taylor quickly, well, Bryce Williams got hurt, but Darius Taylor was better in pass pro than Bryce Williams. The stats back it up. The film
A
backs it
true
up.
freshman. I
The
mean,
PFF grades back it up. Like in pass pro, Darius Taylor is unreal. This is a legitimate, not just Power Five player. This is a Power Five star. I think he is that good at his position. This was an absolute gem that Minnesota found in that recruiting class. And like you said, glad that we get some collectives pointing up because college football is better when players like Darius Taylor are playing on teams like Minnesota. We go from maroon to maroon, going maroon again. Let's keep the trend going. We're going Jaden Rashada. Don't want to trigger any Florida fans here, but look, Jaden Rashada is pretty good at football, if you ask me. All right, and you're gonna look at the scores of the games that he played in, and you're gonna be like, "Well, this guy's a bum." You know, it's the whole Josh Allen thing. You know, he went like 6-7 in Wyoming. You know, it's like he's a good football player. All right, he was playing with Timmy and Joe over there, that they found on the swing sets. On the local elementary playground before the game. I mean, like Jaden Rashad is a good football player. He is extremely athletic. He's got a pretty good arm. I would say that he's young, so like accuracy is an issue and decision making is sometimes an issue. But overall, like the future of Arizona State rests on the shoulders of Jaden Rashada, and moving to the Big 12, that's a big deal. Not everyone in the Pac-12 got to go to a new conference. All happy go lucky. And this is Arizona State as an athletic department. And people always bring up, oh, this school's a sleeping giant. This school's a sleeping giant. This school's a sleeping giant. Arizona State in every sport is a sleeping giant. They've been held back by some administration, feels like some bad coaching hires. I personally love Kenny Dillingham, by the way. I thought the hire was great when they hired him. I'm excited by him. I thought he did a fine job last year, despite what some of you bozos are going to come in the comments looking at their overall record and saying, oh, Arizona State, they stay good. Kenny Dillingham's terrible. He's on the hot seat. What are we talking about? I mean, unbelievable. I think Jaden Rashad is a huge part of Arizona State moving forward.
yeah, you mentioned how tough of a spot he was put in, and like credit to Kenny Dillingham for keeping the team competing down the stretch. But Jaden Rashada was not only was he thrusted into a bad situation, not only did his life get turned upside down, he thought he was going to Florida. Very happy to do so. And then obviously a lot of stuff happened there, very public. Go look at that story. It's not for me to report. But basically, some NIL stuff happened where he ended up at Arizona State last minute. Came in, is making the best out of a bad situation, and is honestly kind of thriving. I love the fit with Kenny Dillingham, like you mentioned. He comes in and wins the job right away. I think it was a shock to see him start that Thursday night game, right? And he came in, he played okay. They had a nail biter against an FCS football team. Doesn't matter. The team was terrible, but Jaden Rashada showed some promise all year in the games that he played. He had a knee injury. He's looking to return to form this spring and summer, obviously, to get ready for fall. He'll probably be the quarterback for him. Elijah Badger returns. Xavier Guillory returns. Cam Scatabo and Malik Brown at running back. I love what they're doing for Kenny Dillingham there. And you mentioned it, Jaden Rashada's potential to bring this team up to the top half of the Big 12, right? In a kind of an open Big 12, right? Is it crazy to say Jaden Rashada could be a top half Big 12 quarterback next year? Not at all. And obviously, he's just getting there, limited experience. Kenny Dillingham, I think, can get the best out of him. I mean, 6'4", 185 as a redshirt freshman, right? Seventh quarterback in last year's class, sixth in the state of California. Right. I love it for Jaden Rashada. There's a reason he's on this list. We're pretty high on him. We understand that context does matter in certain things in college football. Arizona State was a dumpster fire last year, thanks to Herm Edwards, right? And Kenny Dillingham, and they're trying to overhaul it. They're bringing in a ton of transfers this year, a ton of new guys, new faces. It's going to be a brand new roster from where it was just 2 years ago. And Jaden Rashada is going to be the guy to lead them, to hopefully, a bowl game this year, and then obviously take a next step in terms of wins next year. But Jaden Rashada can be an absolute star, right, in college football.
Yeah, and I thought they did fine in the transfer portal. I mean, there were plenty of holes in that team. I believe they got 23 incoming transfers. And they cleaned house themselves a little bit. I believe they got 18 outgoing transfers, but a lot of these guys haven't found homes yet. If that tells you anything. So, um, I don't know. I mean, who would be the biggest guy that they lost? Maybe BJ Green.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Kamari Wilson that they got coming in. Uh, Raleek Brown I like a lot, so I believe you already mentioned. That'll help them on the offense for sure. Defensively, Jeffrey Clark, Keyshawn Elliott, I like. We'll see. I mean, it might not all come together year one, but let's not give up on Jaden Rashada at all. That is a mistake. The last very athletic quarterback that they gave up on Arizona State. Well, I mean, he's a pretty good football player, if you ask me. So maybe won a Heisman. Probably gonna get paid $20 million getting drafted in the first round this year. So I do not give up on Jaden Rashada, folks. Come on, it's way too early. CJ Baxter. Gosh. I mean, when I was trying to evaluate that running back class from last year, you had guys like Ruben Owens who were really good at the top of the class, but I kept coming back to CJ Baxter or Cedric, as I guess Cedric Baxter Jr., CJ. He is so good, man. He's so dynamic. He's elusive. He's got that that quick TJ Yeldon, that quick cut. You know what I'm saying? That uh, just like elusive in that sense where those tackles, those wrap up tackles become arm tackles, and then you just run right through them. CJ Baxter is an absolute stud. My prediction is that he runs for over 1,300 yards next year. Um, he's absurd. He's going to be running behind an absolutely loaded offensive line. He's going to have a very nice quarterback back there, very nice set of receivers out there. And if you're telling me that he can't do what Jonathan Brooks did this year, you're kidding yourself. You're kidding yourself. Jonathan Brooks is a stud though. Like very underrated. Unfortunate that he got hurt, and I hope his rehab's going a lot better. And I'm sure he'll get his opportunities in the NFL. But in terms of overall talent and potential and ceiling, like CJ Baxter has a chance to push that. He has a chance to push that ceiling that Jonathan Brooks put up there.
Oh yeah, I mean, and first of all, there has been a line of elite running backs in Texas, not just in the Steve Sarkisian era, but also before that. Go all the way back to Ricky Williams, another Cedric Benson, right? Obviously, Donta Foreman. You've had studs, obviously. The Mister. Jeez Louise, how am I forgetting his name for the
Well,
Falcons?
Bijan
Bijan, thank
Robinson,
you, and Roshan Johnson. I'll throw him
Roshan.
out there as well. But yeah, this is I wouldn't say a crowded room, but I would say it's very top heavy in terms of yes, you graduate Keelan Robinson and Jonathan Brooks, but you still have Jaden Blue, right, true junior that we really like here, and so well as Savion Red, two guys that ran the ball really well last year at the end of last year, and yes, CJ Baxter I think is the most explosive and dangerous out of all of them. So which is why I think he's going to be the guy, and obviously in yes you're bringing in a lot of hot shots and you feel really good about the wide receiver room and the tight end room that Texas has. Obviously, Quinn Ewers and that O line are coming back, but you lose Xavier Worthy, you lose A.D. Mitchell, Jordan Whittingham, Jatavian Sanders. You mentioned Jonathan Brooks. Like you lose a lot of production, and it's not just gonna be plug and play for that wide receiver room, right? And obviously Quinn Ewers, who I'm pretty high on, but also like we've seen him struggle at times, and I don't know if he's a sure thing this coming year. CJ Baxter is. He really is. You saw him absolutely shred Washington. If they gave him the ball more, they probably would have won that football game, right? He's
Man,
got an elite line. Sarkeesian, yes, he doesn't run the ball enough, but when he does run the ball, it's really creative. It's really well done. They have open holes and all that stuff for a guy like CJ Baxter at 6'1", 215 pounds to really take advantage of. Yeah, I love it here. CJ Baxter, like you mentioned, was a freak coming out of high school, and he pushed his way in a very crowded football room, crowded running back room to the top, and it was honestly a starter for some of those games. Obviously, Jonathan Brooks went down, so that helped with his playing time as well. But regardless, so take nothing away from CJ Baxter. He is a stud.
yeah, this offensive line is gonna be, uh, I mean, nutty next year. It's gonna be nutty. I mean, on the left side, Jake Majors, Hayden Connor, Kelvin Banks. That is ridiculous right there. That half is gonna be insane. On the right side, well, I guess yeah, Cameron Williams, DJ Campbell. I don't know. Is Cole Hudson gonna play? I mean, he could play. That's another
You
good
got depth
backup. I
there.
mean,
Yeah.
you got depth. I mean, just yeah, he's gonna be. It's man. And look, the tight end room, Jatavian Sanders, he's gone. It'll be fine. You're getting a receiving threat in the transfer portal over there from Bama. But the reality is, if you want some certainty in this offense, just know that this running attack is not going anywhere. And I think when Steve Sarkisian is sitting there in his office and he's watching the what are they playing? They playing the Sugar Bowl. He's watching the
Yeah.
Sugar Bowl and he's watching it. And he's just watching CJ Baxter just shred Washington. And then he's gonna think to himself, why didn't I do that more? He's gonna think, let's do that more. Yeah. I mean, last year their rushing attack was already insane. 5 yards a carry, which is good for a top 20 rating. They averaged 188 yards per game. And they only ran the ball 51% of the time, which is like bottom half. That's absurd. So they were a top 20 rushing attack team, but they ran it at a bottom half rate. So hopefully we see that change in the next year for CJ Baxter's sake and for our sake, so that we look good. You know, he's gonna run for like 1,400 yards. Mark my words, he's a stud.
Well, and you're gonna know right away, right? They go to Ann Arbor the second in week 2. But this is a Michigan team that, yes, they shut down Alabama in their running game, but they're also, you're looking at 5 guys at the NFL Combine right now from that front seven. That is open season for Texas. I get there's some guys still there. They'll be fine. They'll be okay, right? Defensively. But CJ Baxter, I think, is the key to winning that football game. Going to Ann Arbor, the running game and defense travels. And Steve Sarkisian knows that. I get it. You see the flash, you see the quarterbacks, you see the receivers he's produced and all that fun stuff, the motion. But let's be real. Steve Sarkisian understands what it takes to win in the SEC. Defense and running game, controlling line of scrimmage, for to be able to close out football games against really good football teams, and having a guy like CJ Baxter to do that when everyone knows you're going to run the football is massive, and continuing to win games that you have to win in the SEC and not blow leads.
Yeah, 2019, 2020 Bama. That was Najee Harris, right? Yeah, it was
Yes.
Najee Harris both years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Steve Sarkisian knows what to do with an elite running back. So for people that don't think he knows what to do, I think he'll figure it out. I think he'll figure it out. Let's get into another guy that's, you know, I'll say not as proven, but certainly someone I'm not worried about at all. Deuce Robinson at wide receiver for USC. You know, recruiting out of high school, he very highly sought after by a lot of schools. His recruitment was kind of back and forth. You know, you thought like, oh, is Bama in on this? Then you're like, oh, well, he's going to Georgia. You know, like the crystal balls were out, and then you see all of a sudden he officially visits USC, and then you see a bunch of crystal balls just kind of pop up for USC because all these recruiting experts want to be right. Yeah, so he was recruited out of high school. They thought they were gonna. I think a lot of teams thought they were gonna put on 20 or 30 pounds on this guy and play him at tight end, but no, sir. He's gonna stick at his 225 and he's gonna play wide receiver and he's gonna be an absolute mammoth. Kind of gives me
Well,
in terms of size profile, he's Drake London size wise. You know, they kind of play a little bit differently, but size wise, Drake London, right?
well, yeah. And part of that, I think, had to do with the fact that he is an elite baseball player and he wants to play outfield for the USC
Yes.
Trojans in the baseball season. And he was a freak, not only in high school and a freak athlete in football, but also baseball. He was the third athlete ever to be named an Under Armour All American in both football and baseball. And the other two, Kyler Murray and AJ Brown, right? Two guys that, first of all, that Lincoln Riley knows a good bit about Kyler Murray, but I mean, those guys are freaks in the NFL as well. To me, we talked about it earlier with the dual sport with Nico, right? Deuce Robinson having that football and baseball background. I love that. Recruit as a tight end, like you mentioned. He came in as a summer enrollee, and he was a guy that, yeah, you thought it might take for a little bit to get on the field because not only was that room pretty crowded on paper, but he was also a little bit raw, trying to get there. Yes, he's got the athlete and the tools to get it figured out, but he still had 16 catches, 351 yards as a true freshman, 2 touchdowns. This guy, the more and more I look about him, the more and more I hear about him, I get so excited to see what he can do with Miller Moss.
Yeah, and if you look at they let some really good wide receivers on their team just walk away, and two of them went to the draft. You had Taj Washington, Brendan Rice. You had Dorian Singer left in the transfer portal,
Mario
and
Williams to
Mario
Tulane.
Williams left in the transfer portal. Pretty big name guys, if you ask me. Probably some highly sought after folks in the portal there. And they only got one wide receiver in the transfer portal, and he's from Tufts, Jaden Richardson. We talked about him in our Miller Moss video a little bit, but it feels like the staff thinks they got something here. Now I'm sure the spring portal is going to come, and you better believe that Lincoln Riley is going to see his wide receiver depth. He's going to try to get some for sure. But dude, Deuce Robinson, man, he will be a part of this team's success this year. I mean, you want to talk about thunder and lightning? Deuce Robinson and Zach Branch. Like, you have to play defense an entirely different way on both of those guys. I mean, Zach Branch just opens things up, and if you have one-on-ones with a guy like Deuce Robinson, it feels like he's just going to outmass you, outbull you, out-athlete you. He's absurd. If anyone wants to know his baseball stats for us, he's 0 for 2 with a strikeout. He's not starting. He's not starting. But I'm sure he'll get his chance one of these days. But for now, he's just going to be a superstar on the base or on the football field, and he'll have to wait his turn for baseball, I guess.
Yeah, he also has a 6'10" uh
Wingspan.
arm like wingspan, which is ridiculous. Yeah, I love how you talked about Zach Branch and Deuce Robinson. That's what I mentioned in my notes here. I was like, they are a perfect partner, a perfect duo for what Lincoln Riley wants to do, for what Miller Moss can do. Freak athlete. And yeah, let's be honest, like they're losing a lot of production at wide receiver, and it was honestly a down year, right? Other than Josh Washington, you kind of missed out on Dorian Singer's production. You thought you were getting a stud from Arizona. Mario Williams has slowly declined since his freshman year, right? Brendan Rice kind of declined as well. With a Heisman Trophy winner quarterback, you were hoping to see elite weapons around him, and they didn't really play as well as you thought they might have. Some fresh blood will be nice, and Deuce Robinson's just that.
Yeah, seriously. I don't know, like, what kind of youngsters or true freshmen are going to be playing for USC day one at the wide receiver position. But let me tell you, you better believe that Deuce Robinson is going to be a gigantic part of this. He got some playing time last year. He found his way on the field. So I guess Xavier Jordan looks like their highest rated receiver. Did they not grab any other receivers? And I guess they're a class. They don't have any other receivers. Is Desmond Stevens playing receiver? I don't know. I don't know. Man, any USC fans want to help fill me in on like what that wide receiver room is going to look like in the fall? Please fill me in the comments, please. But it'll definitely include Deuce Robinson. Let's talk about Avery Johnson. We got two more players to talk about. Two more players. Stay with us. Avery Johnson, Kansas State. You saw him play in the legendary Pop Tart Bowl. All right. You saw him play a couple different times this season when Will Howard got hurt. And you saw him just play in different packages. Like, this guy is the real deal. This guy is the real deal. He's an incredible athlete. He's a competitor. He's got a pretty good arm. Dude, he's a winner. He's a winner. This kind of guys that Chris Kleiman just loves. This dude's a winner. This dude is a winner. Did I say that this guy's a winner? He's a winner. I like him a lot. What do you have to say about him?
They did a really good job of putting him in positions to succeed, not rushing him right away. You knew you had a guy like Will Howard who you trusted to get things done, but there was also a nice skill set that Avery Johnson brought in terms of pure electricity, running the football that Will Johnson did not have. And it was different gear added to this offense. I loved it. You saw it in the Pop Tarts Bowl. You got a full chance to see the Avery Johnson show. Pop Tarts Bowl MVP, by the way. He played in 8 games, 2 starts, right? 337 for 66, 497 yards, 5 touchdowns, zero interceptions for a true freshman. Uber impressive. 52 carries on the ground, another almost 300 yards, 7 touchdowns, including a 5 touchdown game earlier the year, I believe, against Texas Tech. I mean, yeah. First of all, downsides, you lose a ton on the O line, a
Yeah.
ton, namely
Four
Cooper
of your
Beebe.
five starters.
Yeah, you got to replace a lot there. But hey, his legs, his versatility, and a little bit of experience he got this past year is going to help that tremendously. And obviously, you mentioned Chris Kleiman knows what to do with these guys. We'll see what he looks like post Colin Klein. I would love to see him work a full college career with Colin Klein, obviously. But I love it. The flashes you saw, the running ability, the throwing ability. You're bringing in Dante Cephas, who I'm still gonna be high on. Still gonna be behind after he failed me at Penn State. But yeah, I love it for them. In a new Big 12, right? I'm gonna keep saying it. A new Big 12, Avery Johnson at Kansas State. We talked about best coaches in the Big 12. Chris Clemens right up there. Avery Johnson right up there at quarterbacks as well.
Yeah, I think I guess I don't know. It is definitely a prove a year for like they're gonna have to bring it this year, man. Like when you talk about like the value of that offensive line, like these last couple of years has been tremendous. And DJ Giddens, I mean, we saw it happen with Arkansas. You have an elite running back with Rocket Sanders. When your offensive line is that terrible, you you can't do anything. Like he did nothing. So he had to get out of there. I mean, unfortunately, he left to go to another terrible offensive line situation over at South Carolina. But that's a whole nother story, whole nother video that we could talk about that. But yeah, I mean, DJ Giddens is a stud though. He is a stud, and the backroom field's opened up a little bit for him even more with Trishawn Ward transferring out of there. Um, so yeah, I mean, we'll see what like Joe Jackson and Devon Rice can do for those guys in the backfield there. But the offensive line is massive, dude. The offensive line is massive. But like you said, sometimes you can out athlete your way. Sometimes you can out athlete your way. Are you going to be able to do that in the Big 12 this year? I don't know. I don't know. There's still a lot of questions. We'll see. I'm excited to see like what the beat writers got going for us in the spring. I'll be reading a lot up on Kansas State and what they got to offer on the offensive line side of the ball and defense,
Yeah,
and especially in their secondary. But that's we're talking about Avery Johnson.
yeah. To me, getting back to him, I was really impressed with how he was able to come in and play and impact as a true freshman. Right, everyone had Will Howard penciled in as a starter, returning guy who finally put it together a year ago, led them to a Big 12 championship, a Sugar Bowl appearance. Right, you lost some starters on that team to the NFL, but hey, Avery Johnson comes in and he really pushed them for playing time. It was so good that you couldn't leave him off the field. He comes in from Wichita, Kansas, which, by the way, in state, you love that. Chris Clement locking down the borders. You saw him play well at the Elite 11 in his high school circuit, but I just could not be more impressed right away. The buzz around him is pretty high, and we'll see it when he really comes out and plays darn well and becomes one of the best, true sophomore quarterbacks that we have to offer, right? Like this 2023 class was super loaded at the top end, right? You had the 4 or 5 5 stars, guys you love. We already talked about a couple of them: Jackson Howard, Nico, right? Guys like that. Jaden Rashada, right? Earlier today, but Avery Johnson, just another one of them in that 2023 class that is up next in college football.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Jeremiah Love for Notre Dame. This will be the last player we're talking about today. Dude, I'm looking at like this list of, we already talked about Cedric Baxter. Okay, we already talked about Justice Haynes in our last video. That this group of 2023 running backs, as I'm looking at it right now, like it looks like there's a shockingly large amount of them that have just hit. Looking like the top like 15. CJ Baxter, Reuben Owens, Justice Haynes, Quentin Joyner. Gonna get a lot of room there, a lot of work there in the USC running back room. Jeremiah Love was right there, number 5th rated running back coming out of St. Louis, Missouri. There's some heavy battles with several different schools. Notre Dame was very happy to hold on to him. And as a true freshman, he came into the running back room, like the third, fourth string running back, but he significantly increased his output and his carries by the end of the season because he earned it. He was explosive. He's fast. He's quick cut. He's making quick cuts. Very opposite of what Audric Estime offered for them at the running back position, but he was very, very, very good doing it. Like very good. Now they lose some talent on the offensive line there. I feel like we say that. I feel like we say that about every team, right? Like you don't know until you know, right? Like if an offensive line is good, we'll see. Notre Dame normally does a pretty good job of putting one together, but Jeremiah Love, I think, is going to be a huge part of this offense moving forward. He is an absolute stud. Other running backs in this class, dude, Mark Fletcher, Miami. I mean, that's a guy who's already putting in work. It's pretty freaking good. Dylan Edwards, Colorado. Huh. What do you know? I mean, yeah, some of these guys have already hit pretty significantly in this 2023 class. So I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic that this running back class is this electric. College
Yeah,
football
he's gonna
needs
have a
elite running backs.
they do. And especially when a bunch of quarterbacks are kind of question marks, I guess, in college football, at least at the top end, right? Jeremiah Love is a guy that's going to come in and really kind of, I don't know. I think he pairs really well with Mike Denbrock from LSU, and I think that can be really, really fun. Him and Riley Leonard is what I'm excited to see. Right, Riley Leonard, if you don't understand that, if you don't watch a ton of ACC, he is an elite athlete. He can really, really move with the ball in his hands. Two guys that are very explosive, and yeah, he was a burner, a kick returner. He did everything. Notre Dame's trying to push for a playoff spot, right? Make no mistake about that. Right, Notre Dame, their offense is trying to get more explosive. You bring in Mike Denbrock. Jeremiah Love comes to the front of your running back room. Riley Leonard with the deep ball and obviously with his legs as well. You got Jaden Greathouse coming back, Chris Mitchell from FIU. We talked about Jaden Thomas, Mitchell Evans,
Bo
and Jeremiah Love.
Collins.
Bo Collins as well. Like to me, I know a lot of question marks about it, but I kind of like this skill position rooms, his weapons. And Jeremiah Love to me is the most important one out of them all because how many times he's going to have the ball in his hands and what he can do with it. Right? He can be a guy that can turn, a simple, outside zone into a 70-yard touchdown with how explosive he is. He averaged 5.5 yards per carry as a true freshman.
He's really
Incredible.
good. Like if you have not had a chance to watch Jeremiah Love, folks, you can go back and probably turn on like any Notre Dame game from last year. Just turn on like highlights. I don't know that he had any like long touchdowns. I'd have to really go back and look, but those like 8, 9, like 15-yard scampers where, he makes one quick cut and then, evades a linebacker, gets tackled by a DB. He's very explosive. There were a lot of games where he had like 5 or 6 touches for like 50 some yards. And yeah, he's like that. So now imagine if you give him 18, 19 carries in a game. Now you're friggin' talking. Now you're talking about getting a guy like that in a rhythm. Yeah, he's a Jeremiah Love is an absolute maniac. I don't have his stats pulled up, but I'm sure you Notre Dame fans are excited. Actually, I'll ask these Notre Dame fans. Let us know in the comments, like, are you excited for Jeremiah Love, or is there another person in this backfield that you anticipate taking on some roles? You think it's going to be Jadarian Price that kind of takes on that lead back role? You think it's going to be Jabron Payne? I don't know. I don't know. You guys are going to have to tell me. So
Yep.
I personally think those Jeremiah Love.
Yeah, interesting note. Darian Price is down 8 pounds, right? He's down to 198. Jeremiah Love is down 4 pounds. He played at 197 last year, but he's 6'6", 193. I love that for him. I think it's a really good frame. Keeps his explosive. He still has the body to put on to withstand 15 to 18 carries a game in a pretty tough schedule. Yeah, or a pretty physical schedule. I don't know about tough schedule. Yeah, I love it. Jeremiah Love, freak.
Absolute freak. And that'll do it for this episode of College Football's Next Stars. So thank you so much for joining in. Make sure if you like the content, like the video, and please, please consider subscribing to us. If you at all enjoy college football content, we're going to be here doing it, posting 1, 2 times a week. I don't have the number, but I mean, we've been posting at least one episode every single week since last June 1st. Every single week. We're almost there, full year. I think we'll make it a full year. I think we'll make it a full year. If we do it right, we'll make it a full year. But if you're listening on Spotify, please give us a follow, 5-star rating. If you want to see these graphics that we got up on screen and you're listening on Spotify and you're not driving a car to work, come check us out on YouTube. See what we have to offer on this end of the content spectrum. So, but we thank you guys so much. CD, thank you. You got anything for us on the way out?
No, I love it. I've enjoyed doing this. Let us know who your favorite one of this list is, or guys we missed, or obviously, if you agree or disagree with what we said. And obviously, thanks. Like Mendy said, subscribe, like, comment, do all that good stuff, and obviously, stick around because we got a lot to talk about.
Absolutely. We'll see y'all in the next one.